Life Beats. Life Beats with Sally Musa. Only on Pulse 95.
We love fashion. It is glamorous, it's addictive, but it's also an industry that has never moved faster, with global high street fashion brands having not 2 seasons a year, but 52, releasing new styles every week at cheaper and cheaper prices in an effort to seduce us, the customer, into an endless cycle of consumption. But with the global fashion industry now worth more than $2.4 trillion, profits are soaring, all while garment workers and textile producers are seeing cost cuts that have forced them into continually worsening positions. The environmental impact is so monumental that our planet is drowning in clothing and the chemicals needed to produce it. Ayesha Siddequa is part of a global movement demanding ethical and sustainable fashion, and she is joining us here live in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Thanks, Sally, for having me.
Wa alaikum assalam. So good to have you, Ayesha. As we know, some of us know at least, this is a global problem of proportions we cannot even begin to understand.
That's true. That's true. I mean, when you put it in numbers and figures, it's astonishing. It's astonishing that the fashion industry falls into the second or the third. When you said second, I think now it is the third. They've got agriculture in second, but it's amazing. It's amazing what the fashion industry could do to damage the world. I mean, who would think that this was going to happen? I mean, a lot of people I've spoken to, they go, "Are you sure? Are you really fashion?"
Yeah,
I mean, how come?
Yeah. It's
how
surprising.
Come?
It is surprising, and you just think to yourself, why is this such a problem? So take us through, what does the fashion industry look like? Why is this a problem?
Well, again, like, okay, for example, a person going into a store buying a t-shirt. You wouldn't think where it came from, how it was transported here, what went behind making this t-shirt. You would just look at the price, the t-shirt looks nice, you go ahead and buy it. And then, because it's 5 dirhams or $5 or whatever, it's easy to throw them away because you don't think about the cost.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you go, oh, it's just 5 dirhams. It's okay.
I'll buy a few.
I'll buy a few. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's all right. I can just chuck it. Or, yeah.
It's disposable.
It's disposable. Exactly.
It's almost like, single use. We talk about single use plastic.
Exactly.
We're getting to the point where fashion is just single use now.
Absolutely right. You're right on point there. So everyone, and people don't relate that to the environment. So everyone's talking about plastic. Everybody's talking about the oil and gas. Everybody's talking about construction. Where does fashion fall into it? If fashion is the third largest polluting, then come on, people. I mean, we have to wake up to this. I mean, climate change is coming faster than we thought. And people still deny it. They just do not want to accept the fact that this is happening.
We don't think about the true cost, Ayesha, when we're buying our clothes. So let's start from the whole idea that fashion is moving so fast. It is demanding more and more profits at lesser and lesser cost. We don't bear those costs. The consumer is not bearing that cost.
No.
Who's bearing the cost?
The workers. The people at the beginning of the platform, or towards the end, you can call it. They're the ones who are paying for it. After the accident that they were talking about, because of which the true cost was made after the Bangladesh accident.
Remind us of that, because as I was researching for this show, I can't believe it's been 6 years since the Rana Plaza collapse of that building, killing more than 1,000 people in one go. One building.
That's correct.
More than 1,000 people lost their lives, let alone those who had legs amputated, who lost limbs, who, just a number of things. It's astonishing.
It is.
So take us back. A lot of our clothes are actually made in places like Bangladesh.
Correct. Because of the low cost. There are so there are a lot of aspects to it. First of all, it could be the human rights. Then there is the government aspect. Then there's the brand itself. And then there are the suppliers. So there are a lot of hands that go through before that T-shirt, for example, gets to your hands. So the Rana Plaza accident, unfortunately, had a lot of unethical practices
There were cracks in the building.
That's right. There were cracks in the building. No one looked into it. And again, you see the supplier was pressurized by the brand to finish the production of clothes in a particular time. So that factory added in extra workers and created an extra floor, which was illegal, to be able to finish the production. And then, boom.
Because this is what's going on. You've got fashion brands, particularly the high street brands. Okay. They are using these factories.
Yes.
And so they're going out there and they're saying, we need to sell for cheaper.
That's right.
And then they go to these factories and so these factories then have to deliver the product for less.
Correct.
And therefore, then you've got the workers who are being paid less. And then, but it doesn't end there. This is the problem. Because then there's competition on the other side saying, well, we need to compete with so-and-so brand. So they go to this factory, another factory, and they say, can you make it cheaper? The only way you'll get our business is if you make it cheaper. And on it goes.
Exactly. And this is what I call modern day slavery. It's unacceptable. I don't know how the brands even think of making a business out of profits out of someone else's miserable life. How could you even wear clothes on yourself, knowing that someone else has paid for it with their blood or their sweat? I mean, sorry, it just gets me very emotional.
And it should. We need to be feeling this, and we need to be understanding the depth of the problem, because there are garment workers who say these clothes are being made with our blood.
Exactly.
But then, so how do we change this? How do we go beyond this? There are other aspects to this which we will touch on as well.
Well, like I said, fashion revolution that started off after this accident 6 years ago. So 6 years now, and we are almost 100 countries participating in this initiative. And UAE is one of them that I am a country coordinator of. And every year we've done events around the building awareness. We're not just talking about what happened. Of course, everyone by now probably knows what happened, the issue. And we're actually trying to talk about what can we do about it, the solutions. How can customers, how can brands, how can suppliers change this? So everyone plays a role in it. Governments need to put in rules and regulations or taxes or incentives for people who do right. Suppliers need to demand for a standard price and not bow down to all these brands and say, okay, fine, we'll make it for $1 for you. Workers need to stand up for their rights. Of course, workers are the least ones who could do stuff, because then it affects their livelihood.
They have no voice.
They really don't, actually, yeah. And Future Fashion Revolution actually is giving them a voice.
Yeah.
So, and the customer, like Anna Lepay said, you are paying from your pocket for the world you want to see or you want to live in. It's all in your hands. If you do not buy, or you do not give them the profit as a brand, they are not going to succeed. So you as a customer need to realize that and wake up and be mindful. Every time you go shopping, do you really need it? Or do you want it? What is it? Yeah, just because there's a sale. I mean, I keep saying this to all my, even my friends and my relatives. Just because there's a sale doesn't mean you have to buy stuff.
Yes.
If it's really, really needed, then yes, it makes sense. But don't buy it and stock it up.
Yeah, there's a whole shift that needs to happen on so many different levels. We touched on the garment workers. We'll be talking about the environment as well, the environmental factors next, because this is even something that we don't even really know the full extent of. We're going to be talking about that. And I'm going to be putting the question to you, Ayesha, after this. There are a lot of people who say if we boycott the brands, if we stop buying from them, then the garment workers will not be getting their money. So we're going to be talking about that and so much more next on Live Beats on Pulse 95.
Life Beats with Sally Musa, only on Pulse 95.
We are talking sustainable fashion with Ayesha Siddequa, who is part of Fashion Revolution here in the Middle East. You are, in fact, the Middle East coordinator, aren't you?
Correct, the country coordinator.
The country coordinator for the Middle East, because this is a global movement that we are seeing right now. Everybody's getting on board. Everybody is part of it because, as we've been saying, a lot of noise has been made with different documentaries that talk about the plight of garment workers, of farmers who are growing these textiles and, all sorts of things around fashion globally. It's important for us to be aware. It's important for us to raise our voices. Each one of us has a voice. But Ayesha, so far, where we are at this point right now, Rana Plaza happened 6 years ago.
Correct.
What's changed at this point?
If you look at our website and our impact report in 2018, drastic changes happened. When people started asking the question, brands have started responding. Brands have started taking initiatives to make a difference.
How are they responding?
They're responding via social media. They're actually letting you know when you say, who made my clothes? Brand X. And Brand X is replying, yes, we know where they came from. This is where they came from. Not everyone is going into details, but like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of aspects before a t-shirt gets to you. There are a lot of hands it goes through. And most of the brands actually look at stage one, where it's the main suppliers, and then the suppliers have 4 or 5 different smaller suppliers underneath them, which is where the issue is mainly, because the big supplier has all his boxes checked and said, oh yes, we are ISO certified, we are into sustainable and everything else, but then brands don't look into the other 5 that are under them who are not following the standards.
So it's about that transparency and accountability.
Exactly.
How do we create more of that?
Question again. Make a demand, ask the question, get the brands to be responsible, get them to create a sustainability report, a transparency report, and put that on the website. Let people be able to get access to that, like a company here like Shell Group does that. Of course, brands in the Middle East they cannot open their own outlets here. Everything has to go through a franchisee system. So it's a little difficult to control each brand's sustainability report, but the group that is owning them or franchising them, they can create a sustainability report saying this is what we're trying to do, and these are the things that we have in place. Like Shell actually has a criteria in place when they look into franchising a brand, but these are the things that you cannot enforce. But as a group, they're making a difference. They've actually got something in place where they are looking into it. And like Mr. Patrick Chalhoub mentioned in the Retail Summit last week, that every department of theirs has a sustainability ambassador that knocks on to everyone's door every now and then and says, what are we doing as in this department? What are we doing in this department? So they're getting everyone in every department of Chalhoub Group to work towards sustainability in everything that they do, so which is great. MAF is coming up with the same thing. Splash has its own sustainable collection. Of course, Splash is again a fast fashion brand, but that's the only one local fashion brand in Middle East or UAE that has a sustainable fashion clothing line. Where it comes from, everything is mentioned in there. So people
I've seen it. There is actually they have dresses that are made of plastic bottles.
Yeah, which is recycled plastic.
Yeah,
correct. So which is good. I mean, recycled polyester is much better than virgin polyester. So if people can produce out of that, people can mix fabrics, polyester and silk. I mean, there's beautiful garments that come out of these. People have the stigma of, oh, it's sustainable, ethical. It's probably going to be linen, jute, hippie style, not fashionable at all. And it's wrong, completely wrong. They have to go on and just do a little research. There are many brands that sell sustainable, ethical fashion. Well, actually, the word sustainable, ethical. I recently, Ursula Di Castro, who's the co-founder of Fashion Revolution, mentioned what we do as Fashion Revolution, what we are promoting is fashion. Everything else is unethical and unsustainable. So we need to say fashion is what it should be. Using the word ethical, sustainable, we should stop using that because people are getting confused. People are not relating to ethics in fashion.
They feel like two completely separate kind of concepts.
Exactly. So we just need to say this is fashion and everything else is unethical. Everything else that everybody else is doing is unethical and unsustainable.
How did they start this?
The Rana Plaza. Fashion Revolution started.
So right after that. They said we have to. What did they say? What did they say? How did they think they could make a difference?
Well, Carrie Summers and Ursula have their own brands. They have been running sustainable fashion brands for years. And like I mentioned in break, Carrie one day just said, after this accident, she was just sitting down and thinking, well, khalas, it's happening again and again and again and again, all these accidents, and no one is doing anything about it. The accident is in the news one day and then another political issue takes over and everybody forgets about it. So she's like, you know what, we have to do something about it. So she calls up her friend Ursula and says, we got to make a change. Let's do something. Let's call it fashion revolution. Let's make a revolution. And that's how the baby started. So that's how it was born. And since then, they haven't stopped, and neither have we.
So we talked about the fact that we should be thinking about paying more for our clothes.
Correct.
Therefore, if you are buying a designer brand, which costs a lot more, is that money automatically going towards, making sure that those workers are paid well, that they have good conditions, that the farmers get their due?
Not always. Not always.
So
no.
How do we know when it is and when it isn't?
Question. Check the label. Ask the question again. I mean, if you're paying £6,000 for a bag, I mean, it's £6,000. Ask the question. Find out if you genuinely want to buy that particular piece. Get the history of it. And they should be able to provide you that. You're paying a lot of money for that. £6,000 for a bag is not a joke. So why don't you ask the question? And these brands have the money to pay their workers right. They can make a difference. The big brands.
So it's important to realize that they're not always.
They're not always.
The designer brands are not always thinking about these questions.
No, they're not.
And, using the money where it needs to go.
No.
Keep asking the question. That is the thing.
Keep asking the question. Do research. Yeah.
Yes. To that as well, at the same time, a lot of us can't afford the designer clothes. Correct. A lot of us cannot afford those more expensive brands, even though, I mean, it has to be said, if you are buying from heritage brands such as Chanel, such as Dior,
right.
They are very proud of the artisanal heritage, the craftsmanship that comes with fashion and design and production and craftsmanship. This is kind of front and center for them. So actually, from that angle, that is it is obviously a better choice, wouldn't it be?
It would be. Again, you need to find out, I'm not in, I can't say for Chanel and Dior in particular because I don't know the history
of
how ethical they are.
Yeah.
See, like I said, like you mentioned, it's their heritage, the craftsmanship. I hope they're paying their craftsmen the right wage, which they should for charging your customer that much of money. Well, I hope they are. I'm not sure if they are or they're not, but this is a question you can ask. Why don't you just ask them? And they should be able to tell you that. Anybody in the store should be able to tell you that. And just say, I am actually concerned about the production and who's making it. And would you be able to tell me how it's made? Where is it made? Are your craftsmen in London or in New York or wherever? Or do you get them made in Bangladesh? If you do, are you paying them right wages? Ask them these questions. They're going to be astonished that you as a customer really wants to know all of these things. And this will make a difference. This will make them maybe create a sustainability report, or maybe let you connect with the craftsmen directly through their online platform or something of that sort.
Yeah, ask the questions. That really is the bottom line, isn't it?
It is.
When we come back, Ayesha, I want to ask you more about education. That's really important. What's happening in terms of education? And you guys are working a lot with universities as well. So we want to talk about that. But also for those of us who can't afford the more high-end brands that are doing their bit, what can we do for those who, can't pay for it?
No, there are many options. There are many options.
We're going to talk about that next on Life Beats on Pulse 95.
Life Beats with Sally Musa, only on Pulse 95.
Sustainable fashion with Ayesha Siddequa. Ayesha, I wanted to ask you about what you guys are doing in terms of talking to educational institutions and universities. I'm actually somebody who studied fashion design, always wanted to become a fashion designer, and somehow ended up behind a microphone instead. But I will never forget, it was interesting because this was in Sydney, in Australia, who are kind of really big on this kind of thing in terms of sustainability. This was actually 20 years ago, and I'll never forget walking into the first lecture, and it was the entire design department. So it wasn't just fashion design, it was product design, it was interior design, it was architecture. Everybody, all the students were in there at this very first lecture. And the head of fashion, in fact, started off by asking us how much the t-shirt that we are wearing costs. And we were all so excited. We were like, yeah, like mine's $10. And like, we were like, it was like a badge of honor to see who had the cheapest t-shirt, right? One person would be like, oh, yeah, I've got $5. Mine's $5. And so she stood there at the front of the class and went, you have no idea how awful it is that your t-shirt cost you only that much. And so she went into this whole thing about the supply chain and fashion and how it's created. And for her, this was our introduction into fashion. This was the entire design department's introduction into fashion. And this was the first thing to have in mind before you've even started designing and selling and doing whatever it is.
That's brilliant. You need to give me the lady's name. I need to connect with her for sure.
Val Horridge. Shout out to Val Horridge if she's listening all the way
Thank
back
you,
in
Val.
Sydney.
Thank you very much. Well, that's great. That's this is also one of our goals, is to get the universities and students from the young age, if in schools and university students graduating as fashion designers, to keep that in mind when they are designing or thinking about creating anything. So Fashion Revolution has resources online for schools, for brands, like I said earlier, for designers, that they could implement. Teachers can use that in their classrooms. They're like prompt cards, some quizzes and stuff like that, so students could get an idea of what the issue is and how they can make a difference.
To start the conversation.
Yes, exactly, to start the conversation. And last year, we started our first sustainable fashion runway in UAE, and we had 5 local fashion university students participate. And it was very exciting because the theme was upcycling, and they had to create collections that were wearable and sellable. As fashion designers coming out and making your own brand. And we had the opportunity, thanks to Shell Hoop Group, where Dolce & Gabbana and Tory Burch gave away internships. So the students, that was another incentive for them to go all out, and they created beautiful collections. The same thing is happening this year, and we have beautiful collaborators this year again: Shell Hoop, MAF, Splash, MBC, all of them trying to support us. Inshallah, this will be also another successful year.
This is not for profit.
This is not for profit at all. No,
it's important to say that this is putting it out there as something that really is all about creating that awareness.
Exactly.
And changing our planet for the better.
Yes, absolutely. If you would have seen all the documentaries on environment change and climate change, you would know that we have used more than what we could use of the earth. There is no plan B. There is no plan B for this. You have to make amendments now. You gotta make a change now. Otherwise, there's nothing. Nothing for the future.
It's incredible. We really have to put it into perspective, as you said, because this problem is huge, but every single one of us can make a difference.
We can, for sure.
So I was asking you earlier, for those of us who cannot afford high-end fashion, cannot afford, those that are, obviously costing more, paying more for that fashion, how do you make it so that it is accessible to everybody?
Like I mentioned in the break, there are many options for customers, mid-range options. Of course, it costs slightly more than what it would cost in a fast fashion store because there is less demand for it. The more you demand for it, the more the increase of supply and the less that it's going to cost you, like a fast fashion store. So let's make fast fashion. I don't know if it can make it slow, but if we can make fast fashion ethical, let the ethical and sustainable fashion be a norm. People shouldn't be going to a store and checking out or even asking the question. That should be the future. Where people go into a store and buy clothes off the rack and they know it is being made sustainably. And then they come out feeling happy, feeling good, looking good, doing good.
Should governments be doing more? Because it's exhausting, yes, we can all do something. And every time we go in to buy something, we can be asking those questions. But should there not be, more bodies who are looking at this from a regional perspective, from a global perspective, to see that there is a minimum wage that is being given to garment workers, to see that there are ethical practices, that profit is going to where it should be, that prices are not undercut constantly?
Yeah. Well, there are bodies who are doing that, and the UN, the Global Impact, there are rules and regulations out there. But it also, again, goes down to the countries where it's been made. For example, Bangladesh, they had implemented these rules for a couple of years since Rana Plaza and since we made this noise. And then all of a sudden, they pulled back because they were not getting enough production requests in the country. And then the government then says, oh, we will handle it ourselves. We don't need external help to audit all factories. So there you see that what happened there. Well, they got pressurized. And again, modern day slavery, because they couldn't survive, they were like, we will try and, somehow manage to keep it sustainable, but we cannot say that, okay, we're going to not sign an agreement that we will always do it. They should have been stronger as a government, but then if you forced them their livelihood to, not give them any projects, what would one person do if you do that? I mean, that's wrong. First of all, it's wrong for companies to demand such a low price. And secondly, the government should have stood there and said, no, you know what, our people are important, and we will keep up to our agreement. So yeah, again, government bodies are definitely crucial to put a standard or rules in place. And also there are a lot of certifications that customers can look into when they go and buy stuff. For example, Fair Wear Foundation that looks into human rights. We have GOTS that looks into the standard of or the standard of the product and the stages of the production. We have Cradle to Cradle, which looks at the organic health of a garment and recyclability. We have EcoCred, which is an organic agricultural practices that looks into that. So there isn't one single stamp for an ethical and sustainable brand. There are many aspects. For example, like you said, from the cotton that is grown to where the fabric is made and to how that gets to the workers, and from the workers, because not one person does the whole T-shirt, rather the whole shirt. One sews, one puts the buttons, one puts the collar. So, and different factories do different pieces of that shirt. So that all needs to be looked into, and there are auditors who do that. And not all the brands. There's another question that was asked to me last time is when a brand has to launch itself and saying we're ethical and sustainable, not everyone can afford these certifications because they cost you. So one, as a customer who is conscious, needs to look into that and understand the story before you buy. So just because they don't have a certificate doesn't mean they're unethical or unsustainable. Look into the story. If they're local brands, they're like, for example, made in UAE, find out about it. It's in UAE. It's no harm to going and checking about it. You can find out more about it. If you go see the factory, if you think it's for you, if you feel it's ethical, go ahead and buy it. But you don't just judge them on their certifications. Judge them on their culture, the company culture. Judge them on their stories. See how true they are. Sometimes you might make mistakes and buy it because, like I said, greenwashing. People just say they're doing it, but you need to find out more about it.
Yeah, that's so much that we can do.
Yeah.
So many questions we can ask
yes,
and be part of this as well. And you've got Fashion Revolution coming up as well in April.
That's correct.
And there's a lot more to come.
There's a lot more to come. Every year we do this event all around the world between 22nd and 28th of April. And we'll do more throughout the year. And individual universities and schools and anyone who wants to have us, we're ready to speak to you.
It's a global movement. Be part of it. It's amazing. Thank you so much, Ayesha Siddequa, for being with us here in the studio, enlightening us about what we should be asking when we are buying our clothing.
Exactly. Thank you for the opportunity, and assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you so much. Coming up next, we are going to be continuing the conversation. Did you know that there is a media company which is in fact launching a sustainable fashion brand? That's going to be next. We're going to tell you who that is and why they are doing it. It's for a great reason. Next on Life Beats on Pulse 95.
Life Beats with Sally Musa, only on Pulse 95.